The UK is in the grip of a severe cost of living crisis. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet or economic forecasts. It's about real people struggling with real challenges every single day. Families are having to make tough choices, often sacrificing basic needs. They're cutting back on essentials like food and heating, trying to stretch every pound. The squeeze is on, and it's affecting millions across the country from all walks of life. From bustling cities to quiet villages, the story is the same everywhere you go. People are worried about making ends meet, anxious about the future. The cost of everything, from groceries to energy bills, is going up. Wages aren't keeping pace with inflation. This means less money in people's pockets and more month left at the end of the money, creating a constant struggle. This crisis isn't happening in a vacuum. It's a culmination of various factors. It's the result of a perfect storm of global and domestic factors. The COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and Brexit have all played a significant part in this crisis. These events have disrupted supply chains, driven up energy prices, and fueled inflation, making life harder. The impact is being felt in every corner of society, affecting everyone, but it's the most vulnerable who are being hit the hardest. Low-income families, pensioners, and those with disabilities are facing impossible choices, struggling to survive in these challenging times. Inflation is a word we're hearing a lot these days. It's a term that seems to be on everyone's lips, from news anchors to economists and even in casual conversations. But what does it actually mean for ordinary people? How does it affect our daily lives and the choices we make every day? Simply put, it means the price of goods and services is going up. Everything from groceries to fuel to utility bills is becoming more expensive. This makes the money we earn worth less. Our purchasing power diminishes, and we find ourselves needing more money to buy the same things. What we could buy a year ago now costs significantly more. The rising cost of living is a reality we all have to face. In October 2022, the UK's inflation rate hit a 41-year high of 11.1%. This was a staggering figure that caught many by surprise. Although it has come down since then, it's still above the Bank of England's target of 2%. This means that while the situation has improved, it's far from being resolved. This means prices are still rising, just not as fast as they were. The rate of increase has slowed, but the upward trend continues. This persistent inflation is eating into people's incomes. It's a constant pressure that affects how we manage our finances. It means they have less money left over after paying for essentials like rent, food, and energy. The financial strain is becoming more apparent. For those already struggling to make ends meet, this can be the difference between heating their homes and putting food on the table. The choices are becoming more difficult and more dire. The causes of inflation are complex and interconnected. It's not just one thing, but a combination of factors that drive prices up. Global factors like supply chain disruptions and rising energy prices are playing a role. These issues have a ripple effect that impacts economies worldwide, but so too are domestic factors like Brexit and government spending. These local issues add another layer of complexity to the inflation puzzle. One of the most noticeable impacts of the cost of living crisis has been the soaring cost of energy. Gas and electricity bills have skyrocketed, leaving many families struggling to heat their homes. The energy price cap designed to protect consumers has been raised multiple times. This has provided some relief, but bills are still significantly higher than they were a year ago. The reasons for this energy crisis are manifold. The war in Ukraine has disrupted gas supplies from Russia, a major energy exporter. This has led to increased demand for gas from other sources, driving up prices globally. The UK is particularly vulnerable to these global price shocks. It imports a significant proportion of its gas and electricity. This means it has limited control over the prices it pays. The cost of housing, both renting and buying, has been a long-standing issue in the UK, but the cost of living crisis has exacerbated the situation, making it even harder for people to afford a place to live. Rents are rising at their fastest rate in years. House prices, while they have cooled slightly, remain high. For those renting, this means a larger chunk of their income is going towards keeping a roof over their heads. This leaves less money for other essentials like food, bills, and transport. Many are finding themselves priced out of their local areas, forced to move further away from work and support networks. Those hoping to get on the property ladder are also finding it tough. High house prices, coupled with rising interest rates, mean that getting a mortgage is increasingly difficult. The dream of home ownership is slipping further out of reach for many. Section 5. Empty plates and tight budgets. The struggle to afford basics. The cost of living crisis is forcing people to make difficult decisions about their spending. For many, it means cutting back on essentials like food. Food banks are seeing a surge in demand. People who never thought they'd need to rely on charity are now finding themselves queuing for food parcels. It's not just about putting food on the table either. The cost of other essentials like toiletries, cleaning products and clothing has also gone up. This is putting a further strain on household budgets. Families are being forced to choose between heating and eating, between buying new clothes for their children and paying the rent. The impact of this goes beyond the financial. It's taking a toll on people's mental health and well-being, the constant worry about money, the shame of having to rely on food banks, and the feeling of not being able to provide for their families are taking their toll. Section 6. Voices from the ground. Real people, real stories. This section delves into the personal experiences of individuals who are facing the harsh realities of the current economic climate. The statistics paint a stark picture of the cost of living crisis, with numbers that are both shocking and disheartening. But behind the numbers are real people whose lives have been turned upside down. These are individuals and families who are struggling to cope with the ever-increasing financial pressures. Meet Sarah, a single mother of 2 who works as a teaching assistant. Her story is one of resilience and determination. Despite working full-time, she's struggling to make ends meet. The rising costs have made it nearly impossible for her to provide for her family. "I'm constantly worried about money," she says. "Every day is a battle to keep our heads above water. I've cut back on everything I can, but it's never enough," she adds. "The stress is overwhelming. I'm behind on my rent and I'm dreading the winter with the heating bills going up," she confides, her voice tinged with anxiety. Then there's John, a pensioner who relies on his state pension and a small private pension to get by. His situation is equally dire. The rising cost of living has hit him hard. "I've never known anything like it," he says, shaking his head in disbelief. "I have to choose between heating my home and eating a decent meal. It's just not right," he laments, his eyes filled with worry. John's story is a stark reminder of the difficult choices many are forced to make. "It's a constant struggle," he admits. "These are just 2 of the millions of stories across the UK. Stories of hardship, resilience, and the fight to survive. Stories of families struggling to put food on the table, facing the daily challenge of feeding their loved ones, of pensioners forced to choose between heating and eating, a choice no one should have to make, and of working people who can no longer afford to live in the communities where they grew up. These stories highlight the urgent need for change." Section 7. Will it ever end? Expert opinions and predictions. The big question on everyone's mind is, when will this cost of living crisis end? The truth is, there's no easy answer. The economic outlook is uncertain and experts are divided in their predictions. Some economists believe that inflation has peaked and will start to fall in the coming months. They point to falling energy prices and easing supply chain disruptions as reasons for optimism. They predict that the Bank of England will start to cut interest rates next year, providing some relief for borrowers. However, other experts are less optimistic. They argue that inflation is more deeply embedded in the economy and will be harder to bring down. They point to rising wages and strong consumer demand as factors that could keep inflation higher for longer. The truth is, the future is uncertain. The cost of living crisis is a complex issue with no easy solutions. It's likely to be a feature of life in the UK for some time to come. Section 8. Weathering the storm. Tips for navigating the crisis. While the cost of living crisis is a national issue, there are things that individuals can do to help weather the storm. Financial experts recommend creating a budget to track income and expenses. This can help identify areas where savings can be made. Negotiating with service providers, such as energy companies and broadband providers, can also help reduce monthly bills. Many companies are willing to offer discounts or payment plans to customers who are struggling. Accessing support services is crucial for those who are struggling to make ends meet. Food banks, debt advice charities, and local councils can all provide vital assistance. There's no shame in asking for help, and there are people out there who want to offer support. It's also important to prioritize mental health during these challenging times. The stress of financial worries can take a toll. Talking to friends, family, or a professional can help manage stress and anxiety. Section 9, a call for action towards a more affordable future. The cost of living crisis is a stark reminder of the inequalities that exist in our society. It's a call for action to create a fairer and more affordable future for everyone. The government has a responsibility to provide support to those who are struggling. This includes increasing benefits in line with inflation, providing more affordable housing, and taking steps to reduce energy bills. Businesses also have a role to play by paying their employees a living wage and offering support to those who are struggling. But it's not just down to the government and businesses. We can all do our part by supporting local food banks, volunteering our time to help those in need, and speaking out against injustice. The cost of living crisis is a challenge, but it's not insurmountable. By working together, we can create a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of their income or background.